history teacher, founder of Teachers Talk Radio and Teach Meet Icons, who joins us live now. Tom, very good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time on the show. We know that teachers are exasperated. We know that teachers have been striking. Why are head teachers set to join them, in your view? Good afternoon.
Well, slightly different. I'm not a head, but slightly different reasons for them in terms of the funding for their schools. I think is a massive issue for them in terms of the amount of money they have to spend on staff, on resourcing, on school buildings, which are crumbling and falling apart and haven't been invested in for a long time. So there's a huge issue there with funding for heads. I think and of course the workload and the pressure from Ofsted. I mean, the pressure from Ofsted is incredible on head teachers and all staff waiting for that next inspection to come. So I think there's a variety of reasons they're striking. On face value for teachers, it is about pay. That is what the strikes are about on paper.
And of course, pay is a big issue, but it's pay in the context of growing, I think, record numbers of students in class. Workload is increasing significantly. If the government was to come forward and say, look, we can't pay teachers as much as you would like, and that is just that's the reality of it, but we're going to address a lot of the issues around classroom sizes and workload, would that be enough, Tom, or is this fundamentally really about money?
Not, in my opinion. If the government was to give teachers exactly what they wanted in terms of money, it would be great, and it would be, in my opinion, obviously as a teacher, it would be deserved when you look at other sort of salary decisions and the way that salaries are going elsewhere with flexi time and so on. But if the government was to do that, in terms of the number of teachers who are leaving, which is astronomical at the moment, I don't think it would make a difference to that.
Really?
The biggest, no, I don't. I think it will. I think it will continue until the government and the opposition, because they didn't show anything today in terms of their announcements that really show that they can take things in a very different direction. Until things like Ofsted and the pressure of inspection are addressed. Until we start to get behaviour back on track in schools, because behaviour is something that isn't talked about that much outside of the profession, but is at crisis point in many schools, particularly since the pandemic. So until
disciplinary issues have got a lot worse since the pandemic, and of course that's putting a lot more pressure on teachers.
Absolutely. I think discipline issues were already sliding, but I feel like the pandemic has caused huge, much bigger issues than even before that. And I think many teachers are seeing that in classrooms, and that's not really on the agenda for the politicians. So I think shrinking Ofsted is one, which, by the way, would save the government money in the figure of around £150 million. If you add that to the 50 million that Labour pledged today, that's £200 million. If you took that 200 million and actually gave teachers more time in the day by giving them more PPA time, more free periods, and actually made their day-to-day classroom lives a bit more manageable, I think that would be a much bigger step forward. Even though that pay rise is still deserved and it's still worth fighting for, they are the things, in my opinion, that would actually make a difference.
And you talked about money there. Labour talking today about giving teachers a sort of one-off bonus of £2,400 to encourage people to stay in the profession, given, as you say, Tom, so many are leaving in their droves. Is that a good idea? Will that help fix the crisis?
No, not in my opinion. I think it's... number one, there isn't any sort of research to suggest that it will, that financial incentives will. But really what I'm trying to put across here, Ben, is if a member of staff in your studio now came up to you and was abusive to you on a verbal level, and the result of that was nothing, whereas in lots of other arenas that would result in potentially even criminal proceedings, that's the sort of situation that a lot of teachers are finding themselves in. So, I mean, I'm asking you, what would happen? I'm sure
I'll have to get someone looking at me through the glass to give it a go.
Well,
Producer Ellie is probably jumping at the prospect.
I would suggest that something would happen, right? Because that would be a serious issue, and a lot of teachers are having to put up with a lot of things that, yes, teachers have always been willing. Teachers love working with kids. That's why they go into the profession. Sure. But teachers shouldn't have to put up with abuse.
Yes,
and physical and verbal abuse.
And no amount of money, one-off or otherwise, can offset that.
And it's the same if workload's making you ill.
Yeah.
If I don't know why I keep referencing LBC here, Ben, but if you were overworked and you were feeling ill because of feeling overworked, it wouldn't matter if LBC said, "Here you go, Ben. Here's an extra here's an incentive. After 3 years, you get an extra £1,000 or £2,000." You'd be going, "I don't care. I'm ill. I'm feeling sick. I've had to go to the doctor." So these things will not help. The things that will help is taking the pressure away by cutting Ofsted's power down. Taking away the gradings for inspection would be the perfect start with that, which will cost the government nothing, and they could do it tomorrow. And Ofsted could do it tomorrow, and that's what the profession's calling for. If we could start shifting some of that accountability back onto parents and students, rather than everything's the teacher's fault, everything's about the teacher not providing enough support, or not teaching well enough, or not doing this or not doing that, or not being qualified enough. What about the parents and the students? Where is that culture gone of accountability in the country?
Interesting.
Where,
yeah,
where students and their parents are actually, responsible for some of the things that go on. I'll give you the perfect example if I've got time.
Very briefly, Tom, if you would. We're almost at a time.
This would be my last point. Schools having to lock facilities because they're being vandalised.
Yeah.
Right. And the schools being blamed for that. I think we need a real reassessment of accountability and responsibility in this country.
Great to speak to you. Really interesting conversation. Thank you. Tom Rogers, history teacher and founder of Teachers Talk Radio and Teach Meet Icons.